Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. The night before the wedding, my girlfriend accidentally sent a message expressing her boredom and reluctance to get married. What should I do? I feel like being with her every day is a form of torture. It's too painful. Today, she went to prepare the wedding venue. What should I do? How can I make her take the initiative to break up before the wedding? When I see her planning the wedding venue and the messages keep coming, my heart keeps sinking. Is this really the end? A little while later, on the other side, seeing no reply, she casually sent over a voice message. "Lily, why aren't you replying to me?" The girl's voice was sweet and gentle, but there was also a hint of aggressiveness. It was none other than Rachel, my fiancée, and Lily was her close friend. Perhaps because I hadn't replied to the messages for a long time, or maybe Rachel suddenly realized she had sent the message to the wrong person. She quickly started to retract the messages. While I was in a daze, the person planning the wedding beside me began to ask, "So what kind of flowers are you planning to use for the wedding?" I looked at the hastily retracted messages on my phone, gently massaged my temples and said, "I'm sorry, let's postpone today's plan." On the way home, I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes to rest. In my mind, images of the first time I met Rachel kept flashing. 5 years ago, as a distinguished student and entrepreneur, I was invited to give a presentation at the freshman welcome ceremony. While Rachel participated in the artistic performance on stage, she was as beautiful as a swan, proud and elegant. But backstage, she was crying quietly. When she was discovered, she was shy but also a bit angry, saying, "What are you looking at?" I asked politely and distantly, "Do you need any help?" I was prepared to be rejected, but Rachel surprisingly spoke up. "My foot is injured. Could you take me to the infirmary?" Her face was flushed. It was a bit embarrassing. I slightly bent down and lifted the girl sitting on the chair. Her face turned even redder, and she let out a soft scream before hugging me. There was nothing new. It was really an old cliché, but she was so beautiful that it made everything seem ambiguous and romantic. When we got home, it was already 7 p.m. Rachel was lying on the sofa playing games. Hearing the noise at the door, she tilted her head and glanced over with a barely noticeable hint of tension on her face. She asked, "Did you see the message I sent you today?" I stopped for a moment under her gaze and then apologized. "I was too busy today." Rachel turned her head as if relieved and then coldly huffed. "You came home so late today and I haven't had dinner yet," she said. I gently loosened my tie, massaged my aching temples and said, "I'm a bit tired today. Can we order some food or ask the housekeeper to cook?" Previously, because Rachel wasn't used to having other people in the house, I had waited for the housekeeper to come, only for regular cleaning. As for cooking 3 meals a day, I had taken on that responsibility. I had gone from knowing nothing about cooking to being able to prepare a delicious meal. It had been 5 years then. "I won't eat anymore," came a slightly cold and impatient voice from the sofa. I knew that was a sign Rachel was angry. If it were like before, I would definitely go over and cheer her up, but today I really wasn't comfortable. Not to mention, I had seen the message she sent by mistake. I just nodded and walked towards the bedroom to rest. Suddenly, a thud came from behind as something fell. My steps stopped, but I didn't turn around. Lying in bed, my head was a bit dizzy as I gradually drifted into a dream. The sound of clear laughter like silver bells rang from outside the door. I frowned, opened the bedroom door and stepped out. "Rachel, I'm resting here. Could you be a bit quieter?" Before Rachel could respond, a man's voice came from the phone. "I'm sorry, sister. I didn't mean to disturb his rest and get you scolded. It's all my fault. It has nothing to do with you. I played a game with her and she should thank me instead. Don't take it to heart. I'll call you tomorrow." I looked at the scene in front of me and couldn't help but feel a bit annoyed and ridiculous. My girlfriend, right in front of me, was comforting another guy as if nothing had happened. After hanging up the phone, Rachel coldly lowered her face. "Ethan, I was just playing a game with him. Do you have to make such a fuss? Don't you see I'm in a bad mood? Why do you come home and put on a cold face? Is it interesting?" Rachel on the sofa kept complaining nonstop, but it seemed like she was trying to hide something. At that moment, I suddenly felt everything was so meaningless and blurted out, "It's not interesting, so let's break up." Rachel suddenly looked bewildered. She was stunned for a moment, then asked in disbelief, "What did you say? We're breaking up? You said break up? Our engagement party is about to be held. The invitations have been sent out. Our parents and friends all know. How are you going to explain to them now?" I stood in the darkness, unable to see her expression clearly, but in my mind I thought, so this is the reason she didn't say the word breakup. It's really too absurd. People say 7 years is an itch, but we can't even last 5 years. This relationship has come to an end. I'll explain to them. I can tell them it's my fault. This is the last respect I can offer her in this relationship, I said. "Ethan, don't regret it," Rachel said with a hint of irritation on her face, but I couldn't miss the fleeting joy in her eyes. I nodded gently, looking at the dark night sky. "It's too late today. Tomorrow I'll pack up my things and move out," I said. Rachel looked up at me. Her delicate eyes and eyebrows seemed to flicker with a bit of anger. "No need. I'll move out right now," she said. I was a bit bewildered, not understanding why she suddenly got angry, but I didn't ask further. I calmly asked if she needed help with her luggage. "I can pack up by myself, no need for you to worry," she replied. Continuously being rejected, coupled with the feeling of dizziness, I didn't stay long in the living room. I just wanted to take some medicine and then went back to my room to rest. Last night I slept very soundly. When I woke up the next morning, Rachel had already moved all her things out. I looked at the empty room, just a bit stunned, and then calmly went into the kitchen. After all, everything had been anticipated from the beginning, hadn't it? I met Rachel again 3 months later. During those 3 months, I had informed everyone around me about the breakup with Rachel, and had also canceled the wedding. Some people sided with regret, while others were indignant. "You guys had already talked about marriage and now it's like this? Life is really unpredictable," they said. "Rachel, that petty girl, only Ethan could tolerate her. He treated her like a treasure. Just the fact that I had to report everything 24/7 was unbearable," I said with a laugh and a shake of my head. My parents, who always lived a Buddhist lifestyle, also called me. "Ethan, you're about to turn 30. As parents, we're still quite worried about your important life matters. If free love doesn't work out, just follow our words and go on a matchmaking date. We've arranged a meeting for you. Go and see how it goes in a few days," they said. "Mom, I just broke up a few months ago. I don't have any intention of dating or getting married right now," I replied, feeling a bit of a headache. "We've already talked to both sets of parents. Remember to be on time," they said. "All right, the girl's name is Ava," I said reluctantly, but I still went to the appointment. To my surprise, Ava not only got along very well with me but was also a classmate from my college days. When Ava and I left the restaurant after dinner, the sky was already darkening and the air was chilly. I looked at Ava in her long dress. After asking her opinion, I draped my coat over her. Just at that moment, Rachel appeared. "Ethan, what's your relationship with her?" Rachel quickly stepped in front of me, her face slightly serious, her voice raised with a hint of reproach. Rachel looked at Ava with an evaluating gaze, but she couldn't hide the dissatisfaction and anger in her eyes. Unconsciously, I stood in front of Ava and said, "I'm sorry, I have something to deal with first. Let the driver take you home first." I didn't want Ava to be involved in my past with Rachel. After all, it was just following the wishes of both families to have a meal. She had no obligation and no need to participate in this commotion. Ava nodded, glanced at Rachel, then smiled and said, "Mr. Ethan, it was nice meeting you today. I look forward to seeing you again." With that, she turned and followed the driver out. "Ethan, have you found someone new so soon after we broke up?" Rachel's sarcastic words in front of me made me feel tired. My gaze fell on Rachel and the man beside her. "I don't understand, I saw the mess. Age you sent by mistake. Didn't you always want to break up?" "I did as you wished." I didn't finish speaking when Rachel interrupted me. She had a bit of self-satisfaction in her voice. "Ethan, if you intended to use another woman to make me angry about the past and propose the breakup, then congratulations, you've succeeded. Of course, during the time we were apart, I've also thought it over carefully. We've been together for 5 years, and it's normal that the feeling of novelty is gone. But if you still love me, I'll give us another chance." I looked at Rachel's self-righteous face and suddenly felt a bit amused. Why did she think I would always wait for her? I hid my smile and looked at her coldly. First of all, we've been broken up for 3 months now. We're just strangers now, unrelated to each other. What makes you think I need to wait for you? And just because I want to make you angry, I casually date someone else? That's not only an insult to me but also a disrespect to others. Finally, I want to say that we're over. There's no way back. I thought I had spoken long enough and she would understand, but to my surprise, Rachel just looked at me and coldly sneered. "Ethan, don't regret it," she said. Since that day, Rachel began to update her WeChat moments frequently. She posted pictures and shared about her dates with her new boyfriend. She said on WeChat moments, "This is a young student who has been pursuing me for a long time." I looked at Rachel's smile on the phone, and some buried memories surfaced in my heart. From the first time I met Rachel, I knew she was a stubborn and showy person, wanting what she wanted and expressing dissatisfaction immediately. Even when pursuing someone, she had a will to possess. After that welcome ceremony, she asked for my contact information. Then, during the first summer vacation, she came to the company where I worked to, in turn, like most people before her, used that meeting to seek a special relationship. Like an unskilled hunter bravely testing her sincerity and naivety, along with some not-so-clever seductive tricks. The lazy summer days, the continuous chirping of cicadas. A smile bloomed on the girl's face, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You've been bewitched by me, haven't you?" In the girl's eyes looking at me, there were small beams of light. Her eyes didn't avoid mine, carrying a bit of expectation and a bit of flattery. After being pampered, she had no fear at all. I remembered her decisiveness. "Not long ago," she said, "I bet you're an ordinary person. I bet you'll be bewitched by me." I looked at the girl, smiling cunningly and pulling my hand. Suddenly, I wished time would pass slowly, these moments would last a little longer, and even if possible, last until the end of time. So I nodded and smiled comfortably. "Yes, I am an ordinary person." Soft lips pressed against mine. I looked at her closed eyes, close within an inch, and gently hugged her waist. She took a step closer, opened her lips and kissed back. The wind between heaven and earth became lively again. Everywhere, stirring up a whole sky and earth, fragrant flowers fell from above, landing beside the two of us. I always thought this moment would last forever, but I underestimated the weariness in the early stages of love. My fingers stopped on the phone for a while, then deleted all her contact information. After meeting Ava, she occasionally invited me out to eat or have fun. I knew this was not only the wish of both parents but also Ava's wish. After all, she was the only heir of the group, but to stand firm, a strong and powerful background was needed. The cooperation between the two families was an example. Intermarriage was the most effective way to consolidate the cooperation as well as the simplest. Unlike Rachel's stubbornness, Ava was like a bright and dazzling rose, beautiful and shining but also full of thorns. What I didn't expect was that this time, while choosing Mid-Autumn Festival gifts with Ava, I ran into Rachel again. When I was sitting in the waiting area, the door of the shop opened, and Rachel unexpectedly appeared before me with her new boyfriend. She was clinging to the man, speaking in a gentle tone with an intimate and close appearance. I withdrew my gaze, and there wasn't much turmoil in my heart. Perhaps the vows of old had long been buried in the daily quarrels. Behind Ethan, a deep and beautiful female voice sounded. "No, I don't think so." I tilted my head and looked back. Ava looked at me with slightly downcast eyes, her lips curving into a gentle smile. She was wearing a black velvet dress with straps. Her smooth white skin shone under the crystal chandelier as if it were glowing. Her black hair and red lips were so beautiful that they were beyond description. I was slightly stunned for a moment, then regained my composure and said seriously, "Very beautiful." Ava raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled mockingly. "You have good taste." Just as I was about to go and pay, Rachel stepped forward. She looked at Ava with a puzzled expression and said to me, "Ethan, is this your new girlfriend?" I walked over to Ava with a calm expression and said to Rachel, "It's none of your business." Rachel looked at me without any expression, and suddenly there was a moment of panic, as if there was something she couldn't grasp. "This is my boyfriend, Owen," she said, holding the man's hand beside her. Her eyes never left me, as if trying to read something from the slightest expressions on my face, but that disappointed her. I didn't respond. She just said in a low voice to Ava, "Are you tired? Let's go then. She looked at me and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, she's my ex-girlfriend now." Ava looked at Rachel, who had a slightly gloomy expression, and smiled gently. I sighed involuntarily, wondering why I hadn't realized before that Ava had such a quirky preference. I reached for the gift box that had been packaged. "Our parents are waiting for us," I said. "Yes, today the two families plan to have a meal together to discuss the cooperation between the two companies." Rachel stood beside me, her eyes slightly red, said, "Ethan, are you planning to take her home to meet your family?" I didn't want to get involved anymore and just said yes. After saying that, I was about to turn and leave, but Rachel behind me seemed determined and said, "Ethan, are you planning to marry her? What are you basing that on? What are you basing that on to retreat so quickly?" I didn't answer her, a bit of fatigue and weariness clearly showing in my eyes. It was obvious that she was the one who wanted to break up first. Everything had gone according to her wishes. What else did she want? In 5 years of dating, my obedience and respect for Rachel didn't mean that I would unconditionally cater to her. She would obey every command, even after breaking up, still acting like a dog at her beck and call. "Rachel," I said for the last time, "we've been over for a long time. Don't bother my life anymore. If there's a next time, I won't be polite." Rachel seemed unable to believe that I was talking to her like that. After all, during our time together, I had never spoken harshly to her. "Ethan, I'm not indispensable to you," Rachel shouted behind me in a voice full of despair, but also a bit of fear that she herself didn't realize. I didn't care about Rachel anymore. I just held the gift box and walked out with Ava. I slightly had a headache, massaged my temples, and said, "I'm sorry to let you see such a farce." "It's okay. I just didn't expect Mr. Ethan to be so charming." "Your ex-girlfriend still can't let go, can she?" "Maybe she's not willing to let go because I'm not catering to all her demands anymore. Maybe she's not willing to let go because I've forgotten her so quickly. Maybe she's not willing to let go because I'm about to start a new chapter in my life. But that's not important. The most important thing today is the family dinner coming up." I looked at Ava and raised my eyebrows slightly, saying both sets of parents have always intended to matchmake us. There's no other way. I can only pretend to be dating Ava, but I'm afraid tonight's dinner will be a hung-men banquet. Ava winked at me and joked, "What are you afraid of? It's just me and Mr. Ethan pretending. With me being so beautiful, Mr. Ethan shouldn't be worried about losing out, right?" I looked at the woman in front of me, with her bright eyes and white teeth, free-spirited and unrestrained, and I couldn't help but smile. Of course not. In the noisy space filled with people, it seemed that an indescribable emotion was spreading in my heart. When Ava and I arrived, both sets of parents had already sat down. "This is Ava, such a beautiful girl." My mother warmly took Ava's hand and led her to sit down. I glanced worriedly at Ava, afraid she wouldn't be able to cope, but to my surprise, she easily moved between the two sets of parents, making all four of them laugh. I smiled and shook my head unconsciously, carefully cutting a piece of steak and placing it in front of Ava. When I came to my senses, I found myself being stared at by several pairs of eyes. Warm praise from Ethan's mother rang in my ears. "Mr. Ethan is really thoughtful, truly a child who cares about others." Ava put her arm around her mother, lowered her head, and smiled gently, saying she agreed. I looked at the warm scene at the dining table and felt a strange emotion welling up in my heart, but it disappeared in an instant. After finishing dinner and returning home, it was already midnight. Just as I was about to open the door, I saw a dark figure huddled in front of the door. I suddenly stopped. "Did you drop something here?" I looked at Rachel standing in front of the door, frowned, and asked. I wasn't sure if she really had dropped something here because the next day the housekeeper had come to clean the house. She should have taken away the unnecessary things. I couldn't help but smile. It turned out that sometimes even the heavens make decisions for you. "Why are you coming home so late?" Rachel looked up at me with a deep gaze. I said wearily, "We've broken up. You also have a new boyfriend. What are you still lingering for? You used to be different. You never spoke to me so harshly before. What's the final reason?" A soft cry came from Rachel. If it were in the past, I would definitely be scared and try to comfort her in every way. But now my heart was no longer moved. "Call your boyfriend and have him come to pick you up." I said. Owen is not my boyfriend. He's just someone I sought out to make you angry. Can we get back together? I won't cause trouble anymore. I won't mention breaking up anymore, okay? Rachel looked up at me, reached for the corner of my coat, and tears fell incessantly. I pulled my coat back and said gently to Rachel, "You don't really want to get back together with me. You're just not used to it. Not used to not having anyone to care about you, not used to not having someone by your side to arrange everything. It's because you realize that after you left me, everything around you became chaotic." No, it's not like that. I'm learning how to cook, learning how to live alone, learning how to plan for our future. I've been trying to learn. Rachel looked at me intently, her eyes swollen from crying. But why didn't you wait for me? Why are you with someone else? I felt helpless with Rachel. No one would stand still forever. If there was, it could only be because she was not willing to let go. I opened the door and walked in. Before closing the door, I looked at Rachel still standing there, unable to see her expression clearly, and said, "This is the last time. Don't bother my life anymore." After that day, I didn't hear anything about Rachel for a long time. Just as I started to let go and thought she had given up, I didn't expect that our story, with us as the prototypes, would cause a big wave on the internet. She recounted on the internet the story of how we met, got to know each other, and fell in love. She said, "He would take me to see the fireworks from a helicopter. When I was sad, he would cross half the city because I wasn't used to eating foreign food. He learned to cook different dishes for 5 years. He endured all my temperaments and tolerated all my flaws. He was my source of strength." The online responses were mainly blessings, expressing sweetness. When will I be able to have such a sweet love that lasts forever? If not, I won't believe in love anymore. Until recently, she updated a new post. "We've broken up. He's about to get married. They both deserve each other." Just one sentence took the fans' emotions to the peak. The couple I liked is now broken up. What era is this? Is it about being a perfect match? This man has a problem. He wants to be a perfect match. So why date a blogger? Is the blogger just his experiment or just a pastime during his loneliness? It's really something for a third party to intrude into someone else's relationship. And she's a wealthy girl too. At first, her words only caused a small discussion. But unexpectedly, some famous bloggers shared her video and commented that it was the rich playing with their first girlfriend for 5 years. But at the right time before marriage, they demanded to be a perfect match. The online public opinion went crazy about the issue of being a perfect match. This question quickly rose to the top of the hot search, and my and AA's personal information was also exposed. I looked at everything online with a gloomy face. When Rachel called me from someone else's phone, the secretary was showing me the criticisms from the fans and the online public opinion towards me and the Ethan company. The online thing was not intentional. Lily told me to open an account and record it. I didn't think this would happen. Rachel's slightly choked voice came from the other side of the phone. I gently pressed my temple and spoke in a cold voice. "Whether it was intentional or not, only you know. But the trouble you've caused for me, Ava, and the company has already happened. You know that if you come back to me, I'll explain online. You know that online public opinion is irrational. Everything you did was for me, Ethan. I can't lose you. All the mistakes were mine before. Can we start over?" I listened to the words from the other side of the phone and couldn't help but feel confused. I still remember it was the 1-year anniversary of us being together. Rachel took me to a small and not-so-famous mountain. She said it was her secret base. That night, the stars in the sky were shining brightly, but they couldn't compare to the bright eyes of the girl in front of me. She took a ring out of her hand and gave it to me. "Ethan, this is the ring I bought with the money I earned from part-time jobs over the past few months. Put it on this way, you'll belong to me." The girl in front of me was free-spirited and unrestrained, her eyes full of hope for the future. I carefully took the ring, my voice slightly hoarse. That day, the wind was very gentle. Rachel leaned on my shoulder, beaming with plans for the future. "Ethan, what if we break up in the future?" I didn't have time to wait for my answer when the girl in front of me let out new puffs of sound. "No way, we can't break up in the future." I looked at Rachel, who was puffing out her cheeks, and couldn't help but gently tease her. "Are you that confident?" I asked. Rachel pretended to punch me and said fiercely, "Of course. Even if we do break up, it definitely won't be my suggestion. After all, you're the one I've put so much effort into pursuing. The mountain breeze gently blew, and my laughter rang out. So we'll be together forever? But it's only been 5 years, just 5 years, and everything has changed completely. Ethan, do you still love me? Let's get back together. I listened to the familiar yet strange voice from the other side of the phone, recalling every word. I don't love you anymore. You were the one who let go first. I warned you last time, don't disturb my life anymore. You have no chance left, Rachel. I hung up the phone. In my memory, that beautiful girl now seemed to be wearing a mask full of fangs and claws. Everything couldn't go back to the way it was. On the other side, I also received a message. Brother G, your ex-girlfriend is really restless, isn't she? The picture below showed Rachel added her WeChat and said some provocative words. Rachel has been following her for 3 days in a row. I calmly typed to keep the evidence. Call the police. After all, the internet is not a lawless place. Those who spread rumors should bear some consequences. Perhaps Rachel didn't expect that Ava and I would choose to call the police. Inside the police station, Rachel hung her head low, her disheveled black hair covering her face, making it impossible to see her expression clearly. Lou, you've been following me recently, disturbing my life and causing serious harassment to me. At the same time, you also sent threatening WeChat messages to me. Ava took out the chat records and placed them on the table. Not only that, but Lou also openly opposed me online, spreading rumors about me and my boyfriend, humiliating and slandering us, and leading the public who didn't know the truth to participate in cyberbullying. I hope Lou can publicly apologize to us online. Rachel couldn't help but stand up and shout it. Ethan is not her boyfriend, he's mine. She took him away from me. I unconsciously stepped in front of Ava. Rachel was stunned, looked up with slightly red eyes and pleaded with me. Ethan, say something. Is she lying? I looked at Rachel with a cold expression and said to her, Lou, we broke up about half a year ago. Your behavior has posed a serious threat to me and my girlfriend. I hope you can apologize publicly. In the deep eyes of Rachel, a tear appeared. She covered her face with both hands and knelt down. She began to convulse strongly, and her sobs rang out incessantly. After completing the record, Ava and I left the police station. I heard her crying and felt an indescribable emotion welling up in my heart. 5 years ago, we were close together, full of emotions and feelings. 5 years later, everything has changed and is not the same as before. The atmosphere suddenly became suffocating. Consciously, 177,000 minutes later, Ava looked at me and raised her eyebrows slightly, saying that she was just an ordinary person who got involved. The boss had to invite me to dinner to make up for it. She didn't say anything for a long time. It wasn't that she couldn't bear to let go. In a moment, the oppressive atmosphere dissipated. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. I shook the car key in my hand and said, Let's go. I'll treat you, Ava, to a big meal. Very quickly, Rachel's punishment was announced for fabricating facts and defaming others. She was temporarily released for 10 days and had to pay a fine as required. She had to apologize publicly online. On the other hand, I also issued a statement, and the most vocal leaders were sent to prison by me on charges of fabrication. Public opinion quickly reversed. Nyssen condemned Rachel's behavior when the online public opinion was one-sided. Ava bought a yacht and invited me to go to sea to relax. There were dozens of people going together, all of whom were friends in the entertainment circle. The yacht was exquisitely laid with wood. I stood on the deck holding a glass of wine, gazing at the deep blue sea and the magnificent sunset. Why did you come out? A charming and languid female voice came from behind. I slightly tilted my head and looked back. Ava was holding a glass of wine and walking towards me. She took a small sip of wine. It's a bit stuffy inside. I came out to breathe some fresh air, she said. My dad just texted me. He praised you highly. The peak of the public opinion battle was the launch of the cooperation product between the two companies. They used the heat to open up the market for the product. The sales volume is currently unprecedentedly high. I slightly smiled and didn't say anything. Ava looked at the sunset for a while, then sighed and said, That flowers always face the sun. In the end, people also have to keep moving forward. I tilted my head and looked at the tension and subtle comfort on Ava's face. Suddenly, I burst into laughter. "What are you laughing at?" Ava's face turned red, and she looked a bit embarrassed. I looked at Ava and said word by word, "I let go a long time ago. I'm not a heartless person, but I'm also not someone who can't let go, let alone lingering feelings after a breakup." Ava felt a bit uncomfortable and stroked her hair. "If you can understand that, that's good." Ava stopped for a moment, just about to say something else carefully when suddenly a big wave hit from the sea. The yacht was hit hard and rocked. Ava was also pushed towards me by the inertia. I unconsciously hugged her for a moment. The warmth from her shoulder couldn't dissipate. My heart seemed to stop beating for a beat, then beat fast like a drum. After everything became calm again, Ava left my arms. Her face was slightly flushed, revealing her inner unease. At this time I comforted Ava. "It's okay." She looked up at me, her eyes flashing with an incomprehensible emotion, as if betting everything on one throw. She tilted her face and pressed her lips to mine. It was just a light touch, but it stunned me for a moment. However, immediately afterwards the emotion seemed to be released. Suddenly, the kiss fell, and the gentle kiss gradually turned into a passionate entanglement of lips and teeth. In the midst of the haziness, the strange emotion gradually flooded my reason. After a while, the patient kiss on the lips finally stopped. Ava was breathing heavily and looked into my eyes. I smiled and said, "Are we really acting?" My hand tightened around her waist, but I was truly moved. The sea breeze gently blew, and the sea rippled with small waves in the vast space. I heard Ava say, "It's really a coincidence. I feel the same way." After the short trip, Ava and I began to plan the specific engagement time and the wedding. But I didn't expect that Rachel, who had just been released from prison, would come to me immediately. "Ethan, let's talk." She stood beside my car and pleaded. "I'm sorry, I'm very busy." I signaled to the driver to drive away, but Rachel blocked the car. "I won't bother you much. I'm going back to my hometown. I just want to say goodbye to the past." After Rachel was released from the temporary detention center, she was no longer coy and stubborn as before. She seemed to be weighed down by something. I glanced at my watch and said softly, 5 minutes. Rachel sneered. If I hadn't sent that message by mistake at first, our ending might have been different. It's a pity that there are no ifs in this world, nor is there a pill of regret. Everyone has to pay the price for their actions. Rachel's mistaken message was just an opportunity. Maybe even the heavens wanted us to break up. Rachel suddenly panicked, shaking her head. "No, no. Actually, I didn't want to break up with you at all. I just felt that we had been together for 5 years and the passion was gone. Love had been worn away, leaving only kinship." She pursed her lips, trying not to cry, but the tears still fell incessantly. "It's been too long." I mocked. "Eternal love is still love. You think it's kinship? The position of love has changed, so someone else will appear. Therefore, once love turns into kinship, the relationship is over." She sobbed. "I don't know why it's like this. Samuel told me that he's older than me and has more choices. I just need to do a little and he'll pay more attention to me. But I don't know why it became more and more uncontrollable, until I pushed you into someone else's arms." Rachel had nothing left to say at the end and cried nonstop. I looked at Rachel without showing any expression and said sarcastically, "Is it that I'm not good enough to give you a sense of security? Why did you believe others? Don't you also know why you were so infatuated at that time? I really regret it." I cut her off. "Your 5 minutes are up. Next month is my engagement ceremony with Ava. I'm not magnanimous enough to invite you. Everything between us is over. I hope you won't bother us anymore." Rachel stood there looking lifeless. I raised my hand and signaled to the driver to drive. As the car passed Rachel, I heard her whisper softly, "I'm sorry." Whether it was her or Ava, the cool night wind blew. Everything had ended, but a new chapter had just begun.